Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the second masterclass of our Pain Points Week. This week, we are aiming to address some of the most important issues facing hospitality in March 2022, and we start at 10 o'clock every day. I am Jane Pendlebury, CEO of HOSPA, and you're very welcome here today. I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Duncan from Sleeping Lion. Sarah offers masses of pro bono support to HOSPA on topics such as sustainability and ethical business. So we're very grateful to her for her involvement with our organisation. And very appropriate that we have Sarah here with us today on International Women's Day. Today's issue is all about sustainability, how to get on the right course and, importantly, how to stay there. It's an enormous and ever-changing subject, and one that we cannot and must not ignore. As I said at the close of yesterday's webinar, a lack of action on sustainability will not only continue to damage our planet, but also our businesses. So we're here for 30 minutes each day this week, and let's get started on today's. I have some questions ready for Sarah, but please do ask your own on the Q&A and chat box on your Zoom app here. So Sarah, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Do you want to say a little bit about who you are and Sleeping Lion, and then we'll just dive in with what we think the biggest issues are for hospitality?
Sure. So my background was actually is hospitality. I started life at the Savoy Group, where I spent 4 years at Claridge's before doing other things, heading off and working in private club development and spa development in Asia, before coming back to the UK and setting up Sleeping Lion over 15 years ago now. And originally that was very much business development and marketing for hospitality, but also over the years that's branched out into many different industries. But more recently, the last sort of 3 or 4 years since writing the ethical business book, my focus has very much changed to sustainability and helping businesses view business development through a sustainable lens.
Brilliant. So if I was to ask you the question, what the biggest issue or the biggest pain point facing hospitality in 2022, clearly that would include sustainability.
Yes, I was going to say, I was thinking about the question, and I mean, it just sort of, it almost feels biblical actually in terms of the biggest issues facing the industry, facing us all at the moment. But obviously I'm here, focusing on sustainability, and I think one of the interesting things is, and this will probably be a recurring thing, but sustainability, by nature of the word, sustainability means the ability for something to exist in the future, and that in this context is often, we talk about it in terms of climate change and the risk to us in the future of our planet not being habitable, safely and fairly habitable by all of us. But it does all seem a long way off. And I think there are business reasons, which I'll come on to, why this is now more of a pain point for the industry. But broadly speaking, I think one of the challenges here is that we are not currently, particularly here in the UK, we're not currently experiencing some of the real implications of climate change. So they're slightly off and away in the future, whereas some of these shock waves that are coming through with pandemics, with war, with staffing shortages, all of these sorts of things, they're very real and very now. And so one of the challenges is balancing those two things, the firefighting that's necessary whilst planning for this longer term ability for us all to be in business in the future.
Yes, completely. And a lot of the pain points this week, we've been able to pinpoint what's driven them, whether that was, as you've mentioned, the pandemic or the war or Brexit. But sustainability and the planet are very different to that, aren't they? And much harder possibly to get one's head around for the reasons that you've given. So what would you advise somebody? I think it's tricky because everyone's on a different level of their journey, but there's people who are probably feeling dreadful because they haven't done anything, people who think, oh, I've got to do something, and others that are already some way down the path, but are concerned about it. What would your advice be generally?
I think, first of all, if we just kind of look at, there is the worry about the long term, but let's look at the moment about how it's affecting businesses today, and the pain points that are real today. And these have suddenly emerged because we've been talking about sustainability and climate change for a number of years. But the reality is it hasn't affected day-to-day business until suddenly now we have a few things. We've got the investor area where now, if you're looking for investment, then you will be asked to show some credentials because people want to invest in businesses that they believe to have sorted their sustainability or their ESG, their environmental, social governance agenda. We also have the whole, I get so many people contacting me because suddenly for requests for tenders for corporate business, hotels are being asked to jump through quite a lot of hoops to show that they are doing the right thing through sustainability. And that was touched on at HOSPA with Sky. And that's, they won't put business into hotels unless they meet certain criteria. And then you've got other customers, more of your leisure customers. We know that people are looking for products and services that they perceive to be greener or better for the planet or for society. And the final point is employees. We have a talent crisis, and the data shows, or the research shows, that by and large people want to work for businesses that stand for something a bit more than just simply making a stack of cash. And so in terms of attracting and retaining the best talent, all of these things are aligning to say we need to get our sustainability agenda in order.
That's very true, isn't it? I think probably when we all first started talking about this, well, I think you were probably ahead of the game, but a lot of people started talking about it. It was going to be attracting millennials, making sure that you would get those guests that were had lived with more of a purpose than potentially other generations. But as you say, it has changed significantly, and people going for investment or just trying to win a piece of business. And that, again, that started with companies like Sky. And you see some amazing things from companies like McDonald's and people that probably you wouldn't have imagined would do great things on the sustainability path. But it's not just the big companies anymore, is it?
No, well, I mean, one of the things that anybody who's on whatever part of their sustainability journey they're on, and we can talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but anyone on the journey will know that you are part of a supply chain. And everyone else in that supply chain is looking at their sustainability credentials, and they're looking at their supply partners to be mirroring or matching or stepping up to the plate when it comes to this area, and decisions are being made as a result of it. And so this is the knock-on effect that suddenly made it very, very real for people. Before it was just, oh, should we do this because it's the right thing to do? Now, actually, it is, and I said a license to do business. It is actually now, commercial imperative that you kind of have to get this stuff sorted. Otherwise, you may well be missing out on a lot of opportunities.
And you've advised some very high-profile hoteliers out there, haven't you? And also helped us at HOSPA an awful lot with our sustainability toolkit. And you were very useful at HOSPA, it's our conference, by interviewing the relevant people. So there are the shiny examples. You may want to talk a bit potentially about what you did with Danny Pecorelli at Exclusive, and we've done quite a lot at HOSPA with Sue Williams from Watley. I think, so do feel free to talk about those because they are shining examples. But I think, as we've said to each other previously, they're putting it up there on a pedestal, and it makes it somehow seem even harder to reach, even harder to achieve the levels that they have reached.
I think I think there are some people doing some brilliant stuff, and you've just named a couple of examples there. And what's brilliant is that everyone can learn from those examples, and they're two, I think, very generous people and organisations who are passionate about it and therefore want to share and hopefully inspire others. But I do agree with you that actually, if you're just starting out, sometimes this area can feel a little bit overwhelming. And so a lot of what I do is talk to people about getting started, about sort of not being sort of paralyzed with fear or overwhelmed by it, and just starting to create a plan that is right for you at that stage of the journey. I think you absolutely have to shoot for the stars, and you have to aim to be aligned with things like the net zero kind of global ambitions and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the COP26 keeping 1.5 alive. That's enough of all of those sort of slogans, but you have to be aware of the global ambitions. Ideally, you want to be aligned with them, but you have to start somewhere, and getting a roadmap or a plan together that gets you from the beginning of your journey through to top levels of best practice. And actually really, I mean, I say this to a lot of people, but for me, I really do believe that this is you have to start about changing behavior. This is not something that sits on a spreadsheet. It's not a project. It is a complete different way in which you start to operate and run your business. And every single person within the business just starts to think differently about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis and how they can do it in a greener or a more responsible or a more thoughtful way.
So it has to be led by somebody at the hotel who has the influence to change culture effectively, isn't it? And would you say, I guess it varies from one hotel to another, where you're an independent or a chain, but other ones that are successfully going along the track to sustainable business, have they appointed a single person or a team, so that there is a single point of contact at the hotel or the hospitality business?
I think people are doing different things, but my advice would always be to set up an initial group of ambassadors, a team that really gets it, and it's represented, and every discipline within the hotel is represented there, so everyone's got a voice. And it's crucial that the very top people in the organization also sit on that team, because if you don't have the boardroom or the senior management buy-in, it's a project, and this doesn't work as a project. As I said, this is about embedding it into the very kind of fabric of the business, and for that needs to be supported from the top, but it needs to be allowed to grow from the bottom, because everyone has the potential to have a brilliant idea that will help to make a hotel run in a more responsible, a more caring, a greener way.
Quite often on a masterclass like this, I would ask questions about quick wins. How can people get started? But it's not a quick win situation, is it?
Well, it's interesting, because as I was saying before, I think there is a two-speed thing that goes on here. One is, as I said, working out how your plan fits within global ambitions and making sure that you're heading in the right direction, and that you're learning and growing and moving to that doing it the very best way. But you also need the motivation that comes from ticking off some quick wins. And that's why I do think that with a group of people within a hotel focused on it and workshopping it, there's a number of things you can do to say, yeah, we can change that tomorrow. Because quite often it's just about a conversation. you can be sitting in a room and you might not know that there's something that's been going on in one small part of the hotel that could be changed overnight. It's just that we've always done it this way. And suddenly, if you encourage and you empower people to challenge their behavior, I think there are loads of quick wins that you can get. And many would argue in this space that lots of little actions can actually add up to make a really big difference.
I do remember Sue Williams actually talking about she changed her rubbish bins from black sacks into see-through bags, which made people think twice about what they were putting out into rubbish. So there actually is a quick win, but you need a lot of those, don't you, to actually make it effective. And a strategy is clearly an important part.
Yeah. So you've got to have a clear strategy, but then there's loads of tactical things that you can do. And they can be really quite sort of nimble and change and evolve. But you've got a strategy as well. And I think just on that point, because I know it's something that you and I talk about a lot, but those quick wins, those things that people have done that have really worked and made a difference, what I'd love is for those stories to be shared, and for people to send those into us so that we can put them on the toolkit.
Yes, absolutely. We have got some nice case studies on there already, but we need more, because I think just to reassure people that it isn't the daunting prospect that it needs to be, that it seems to be, and that by getting your staff engaged, it can happen quite effectively.
Yeah, I would. That's what I would really love, is that sort of platform of sharing of ideas and just things that have worked, particularly on the quick wins. I think it's just I think it's just something everyone can get involved in.
Now, I do have a question actually from the audience, so it's quite long, so I'm reading it a little bit blind, so let's hope something I can. You talked about quick wins, but ultimately being a sustainable business and achieving net zero requires investment. This could be an interesting one. How do companies trade off sustainability with the huge increases in operational costs, namely energy, fuel and food? That's quite a heavy question.
Yeah, well, let's go back to the one of the realities here, and it's a very good question. If you're going to do this properly, you do need to invest in it, and that is investment both financial and human. So whoever the person is there, is you're absolutely right. It requires some investment. Having said that, many people would argue that if you look at efficiencies generally throughout your organization, if you do that properly and get the right people in, you should be able to find some cost savings as well by generally looking at some potential areas of inefficiency. But there's no doubt that if you want to do this, you need to recognize why it's so important in the long term, and you need to have complete buy-in that there will be resources necessary to get you there.
And I guess it's a hard time for many hoteliers at the moment, and hospitality businesses, just because there are increasing costs. I took a phone call, I think it was the beginning of, or the end of last week, from somebody who was struggling to even get a quote for their energy supply, or at least a confirmed quote, a fixed fee that would carry them through. And I know that's an issue across the board. And I did speak to UK Hospitality, and they are trying to address that with government, but it's not top of anybody's priority list at the moment, the cost of fuel, and that, I guess, current circumstances would suggest that's not going to improve anytime soon.
No, and that takes us back to this, we're people are juggling all these acute these firefighting, these immediate urgent things that are coming through, and it's how you position those against this long-term thing that isn't necessarily affecting us too much right now, but will affect us if we don't do something about it, and will affect everybody else.
and will affect everybody else. That's a very good point. I guess though, if a hotel is very early on their journey, just to put out a word to the whole team saying who would like to be involved is a great way to start, because those people will presumably, the fact that they want to be involved would suggest that they've already got some ethical feeling about it and wanting to drive it forward. And then just to start the process, it opens the eyes of maybe, as you said, the people at the top, the people in the boardroom, the senior management, who perhaps are thinking really must do that. But if there's people doing little bits of action, and then we'll start to prove that it makes business sense to make the investment, and that I guess is the killer one, because just asking a board for some money for sustainability is, it might work straight away. I can see a lot of examples where that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult, and I, in a number of cases, I have been asked to come and sort of help lobby the board in this area. But in an ideal world, every company would go, wow, this is really important. This is long term. We've got to put this long term strategy somehow above some of this short-term firefighting, and we need to get a structure and a plan in place that is properly resourced both financially and with people, and it has the science-based proper science-based target initiative for anyone out there who's sort of familiar with that. It's properly aligned with that. It's properly aligned with net zero, and you've got specialists in who understand and have the expertise to properly help you to understand your current carbon emissions and measure them, work on a plan to reduce them in line with whatever targets you have set for yourself, and then advise you on those residual emissions that you actually cannot get rid of because you can't run your business without it, how you can then offset those in a high quality way, supporting projects that help to mitigate your residual emissions. So that's the kind of scientific side, and you do need specialist help on that, and there are lots of people out there that can help with it. Meanwhile, get the cultural side working, get the behavioural change working, and that you can start tomorrow.
And that's something I know you can help people with, Sarah. And our sustainability toolkit on the website is full of helpful bits of advice. Is there anything you'd particularly like to highlight from the sustainability toolkit that we haven't already talked about? Or do you think people talking to you and people like you is the best way forward to actually get the conversation started?
The toolkit has been something that we've started, as I say on there, and we've said it's a work in progress. It always will be, because this is not an area where you arrive, you just start on a journey. So there are some handy sort of hints and resources there for people, but yeah, more than anything, I just love people to be sharing their own experiences, what's working, but also some of the barriers, and there are barriers, there really are, but how people have overcome those barriers and been able to push forward.
Yeah, and as you say, the case studies are the most interesting things to read, because different people come at it from different angles and different levels of investment as well. But I guess, I mean, there's all sorts of taxes and things changing, aren't there, which will affect people's sustainability. And if people are already losing business because Sky, American Express, whoever it is, won't place their guests just for an overnight stay with a hotel they don't perceive meets their criteria, but probably more damaging to the bottom line, the conferences, the events, the incentives, that sort of thing. If people are losing business on that, then that should be incentive enough to change the culture or to change the thinking within.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even sort of touched on some of the legislation, because larger organisations will know that right now it is a legal requirement for them to measure their carbon emissions. That's likely to also come through into smaller businesses as a mandatory rather than just what we should be doing over the years. And I think, without getting into too much detail there, the bottom line is we can expect to have good corporate behaviour being incentivised when it comes to sustainability, and poor behaviour being penalised officially and through legislation in the future. And we can expect that to increase. Yes. If the governments continue to support what they have to date said they are supporting.
And how do you think we fare in the UK compared to, say, other European or even global countries?
That's a very interesting question. We're saying quite a lot at the moment, probably as a off the back of COP26, and I think the proof of the pudding for all countries will be in delivering on some of the promises and the commitments that have been made.
And if there's
while simultaneously, I guess it's that, while simultaneously dealing with shockwaves that you know, I was going to say the unprecedented stuff, but as someone pointed out to me the other day, we keep using this word unprecedented, but most of the stuff actually people have been saying is going to happen. So yeah, maybe we should, but they still come as shockwaves.
Yes, it does. Everything seems to be hitting us in very quick succession at the moment. I see a cartoon about somebody in the future looking back at the, you know, from maybe from Brexit 2016 through to the current moment. And this is happening way too fast. Too much going on with Brexit, the pandemic, and sadly now the awful war in Ukraine. So there is a lot going on, but this is something we can't lose sight of.
And I think that's the main thing. It's to be really understanding of that. I think that I really try to come at this from a supportive point of view and not a critical point of view, because I think it is quite, you will find, you know, in and around this, people sort of pointing fingers at people flying or eating too much meat or whatever it may be, and we all know that in an ideal world all of us should be changing our behaviours, but in order for that to work, we need to support each other and not work against each other. And I guess one of my final points here is, if there is one area of business that should not be competitive, it's this one. This is the area of business where the industry should be coming together and sharing best practices, because it means that, you know, not only do individual hotels have a license to trade in the future, but the whole industry will exist in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you're completely right, because we are, by nature, so many hospitality businesses do compete, but people that are doing this for the right reasons will absolutely see that this isn't an area to compete in. And
there are areas of sort of potential collaboration whereby, you know, even if it's just distribution of food and products, where hotels can work together to reduce the impact of some of our standard practices.
Right, brilliant. And you're available for people to come and have an initial conversation with, aren't you, as well? So it's not a sales pitch, but I just think
no.
You do such great things, and you will do it. You do it with us in partnership at HOSPA, and we are very, very grateful for that. So I don't think we've got any further questions. Is there any last points you want to make before I say my closing words?
No, it's just it's always good to chat about this, and I could chat about it all day.
Yes,
but as I was told at the HOSPA conference, that even though I could chat about it all day, I'm not allowed to.
You know? But if anybody wants to play that bit back, that it was a brilliant interview with Sky, and followed by Whatley Manor and the great things they've done. So if anybody is watching and wants to have a look through, that is still all available. But thank you so much, Sarah. Once again, lots of useful advice and thought-provoking material there, and we're very grateful. This and all of our masterclasses are recorded and will be able to view on the website later this week. Please do register and tune in tomorrow morning when I'll be talking to Kees van Donk from NEC, and he will be addressing some of the recruitment and retention issues and how hospitality businesses can get by this another of our very big outstanding pain points at the moment. But thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome.
For listening, and we'll see you all again tomorrow, hopefully. Thanks. Bye-bye.